Hello, and thank you for joining us for this World Council of Credit Unions virtual event, Digital Transformation. It's not an IT thing, sponsored by Creatio. My name is Greg Newman, Director of Communications for World Council. Digital transformation does not necessarily mean quickly replacing all your technology solutions and business practices simultaneously. Instead, it's an evolution over time. It's not enough for a company's leaders to champion digital transformation. Digital transformation success is dependent on every department and employee within a company adjusting their mindset. Today, Shahani Perera, Senior Vice President of Digital Transformation at Innovation Federal Credit Union in Canada, will touch on the three key areas where you can adjust the way you approach your work to prime your departments and organizations as a whole for success in digital transformation. If any questions come into your mind as you listen to today's webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and type them in there. Shahani will answer them later in the hour as time allows. I also want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded and it will be available later today on the World Council YouTube channel. Shahani Perera is Senior Vice President of Digital Transformation at Innovation Federal Credit Union, which recently became just the third federal credit union in all of Canada. She truly believes in transforming organizations using a structured change management approach and leading her teams with heart and backbone. She strives to lead with humility and a stop and drop and collaborate attitude and a desire to support others at any level through their change journey. Prior to joining Innovation Federal Credit Union, Shahani worked in various industries and in consulting with experience in retail, wealth, business banking, human resources, marketing strategy, change, and transformation. Shahani, thank you for being here today with us, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Greg, for having me. I'm excited and I'm nervous at the same time, so bear with me, everyone, as pretty passionate about this topic. And there's just a slight change on the title, so I don't offend all the IT people in the world around. It's not just an IT thing that digital transformation is. So I'm going to kick off. Again, thank you so much for introducing me and going forward. So this is a cartoon I found as I was doing this presentation. It makes me laugh because we have these conversations and I've heard them in so many organizations. So it's our top priority, digital transformation, Zoom meetings, Slack, data-driven. You know, you talk about agile and you talk about cloud, some TikTok videos, and then we have to go back to say what it doesn't mean. And one thing is, it's really a language thing. And it's one of the biggest challenges I think I've faced in my own career, plus what I see here in the world is, because everyone says something's digital transformation, right? So you've got IT, marketing, anybody selling anything really goes to say it's digital transformation, but there's actual definitions and levels. So I just wanted to level set with everyone on this call before we go down kind of the different frameworks we can use. So Gartner actually talks about it from digitalization as just changing analog to digital form. So maybe paper files to electronic files. Digitalization, it's actually the use of digital technologies to change your business model and provide new revenue, value producing opportunities. Good example, fintechs are really likely in that category. Digital transformation is actually all of the above, and it's an organizational change, and it includes an employee experience, which is a really important part, and you'll see me kind of touch on that later on. And so just a definition we use, or I've used, is it's a process of using digital technology to create new or modify the existing process, culture, customer, I mean, we say member experience in the credit union world, to meet changing business and market requirements. It's reimagining business in the digital age is really digital transformation. It's a people, process, technology change, not just a technology change. So as you'll kind of go through, I'm going to give a little bit of an example of other ways to look at it. So there could be stages, right? Every organization kind of goes through maybe different stages, not always a straight line. Sometimes you might skip one, sometimes you're not. But really foundationally, I think credit unions around the world are doing the upgrading technology, latest platforms, cloud, AI, digitizing the operation, seeing those huge scale benefits. For us as an organization right now at IFCU, we're going down that road with VeraPark for our front-facing platforms. But what you're not doing there is you're not transforming. You're not being digital. You're not creating digital disruptive products, members, relations, or operations. Then there's that siloed approach, which is parts of the organization are experimenting with it, with transformational business models and products. So you've got your fintechs, maybe kind of playing a little bit of play in there. You might be doing an ERP, changing a few things, but there's no enterprise-wide strategy to completely transform what is your current business model. That partially synchronized, I think, really speaks to the mix of the old and new. So you're kind of battling both worlds, right? So you've got some old processes, you've got some old technology, but you're also mixing them in. But everyone's striving for a corporate-wide strategy. But then you go down to you're not fully invested in that full transformation, but fending off that nimble digital native competition. So you're really one step away from having a full transformation. There's that fully synchronized. So you're delivering that leading customer results, innovative digital products, best-in-class operational efficiency, but we're not winning every time. We're digitally optimized at the moment, but you're like one technology away from being disrupted again as well. So that's kind of the fourth stage, but really truly being digitally transformed. Digital operations is the DNA of the company. You're a market leader, fully digital. Your workforce is digitally savvy. You provide value to customers, members. You're really not static. You're constantly morphing, so constant change. And that agility is really built into every single person in the organization and what you do. That's a way to look at it. I'll say you should pause and really think about where does your organization sit, because you really have to understand where your organization is. And you might actually be across you could be 1 to 3 all at the same time, right? The reality is nothing is ever a straight line, especially in our changing world today. And so you could be across the full 3, but is your goal really to make it your living DNA, or are you comfortable with fully synchronized, right? The reality is it's really based on your company, your governance structure, your board. How does that work for you? So I always go back to this model because I think it's really important. And I think it's important to understand that from sharing your message to your people, because if they don't know where they're going or where we're going as an organization, it's really hard to get across that successful line for digital transformation. So how do you do it? I think there's lots of automation softwares out there. Microsoft in itself has just invested tons and tons of money into different automation so that everyone can follow low code, no code. One of the first things we do is you decide on your core tenets of your digital business model. And so for IFCU, that was different. That was a different set of tenets that we use. And so just as an example, we talk about it from a competition. So platformization. It's probably a bit of a new word for people. And it really speaks to platforming out your business. So maybe we're not the best at certain things. So we platform that out with a fintech or a partner, or we go into a different agreement to really platform co-opetition. So rather than seeing, a fintech as a competition, we're saying, hey, let's work together on this. Another tenet for us is really member centricity and constant change. So everything I've ever learned was structured change management, going through ADKAR, whatever that may be. There's other models out there, Kotter's 8 steps, all of those. But constant change actually involves building resiliency in your teams. And that takes a whole lot of work at every level and every person. We also talk about networks, our path to purchase, and the digital behaviors as tenants. The other big one for us is experimentation. So letting people put dollars into budgets that are for experiments that may work, that may not work, but learning quickly. We also follow a lot of lean startup practices. So change quickly, fail fast, all of those great practices that you'd have. We talk about iteration releases, not big bang releases. So as you're going through, any process has probably multiple iterations. For us, another tenet for us is our data. So it has to create value. Big data, it's a strategic asset for us so that we can't just have it in the background and everyone should be able to access our data. Are we there yet today? Probably not, but we're going to get there. But we had to get a few things right. And I think we're an evolution from IFCU, previous organizations I've worked in as well, is really an evolution. And so for us, it's really committed ownership. And so as much as I have the title in the organization of digital transformation, it actually takes pretty much every senior leader to be on board. And it's about alignment and creating that alignment and not being on just an agreeing phase, because alignment is action-based, right? We really talk about the key issues, the risks, the barriers. They're transparent conversations that have to happen at every level in the organization. The other part is, for when you start creating roles like my role or other departments of digital transformation, etc., you have to have a process to resolve the lack of commitment by a leader. So if you feel like someone is going outside of strategy or outside of that digital transformation, you really need a process. And that's a really uncomfortable thing to go through, because not everybody loves having that type of open communication. Not everybody loves to have to go through that process over and over again, right? And it's a tough one, and it's a tough role for an organization or a department to have, because everything is new, right? Nothing is old, you're changing constantly. The other part is that disruption empowerment of whoever is running this. And so you really need a strong transformative purpose. For IFCU, it's so simple for us that we can always remember it. Simplify banking for all Canadians. So simple. It sticks in the head of everything we do. We talk about it when we're transforming, when we're implementing software, when we're changing a process. We always say, is this going to simplify banking for all Canadians? Every organization can have a different one. You know, I think Netflix has a different one. There's different models out there. The other thing is cover to take risks. So dollars in the budget for mistakes, knowing that it's okay, and there's, you know, psychological safety to say, yeah, we messed up on this one. We're going to have to reset. And so there's actual dollars you have to put into your budget for those mistakes. And on the flip side, there's also measurement of value, right? The other part is leadership skin in the game. So measurement of the impact. You know, there's a fact out there, and I just pulled it while I was coming up with this presentation, around 60% of technology spend is now outside of an IT team. So gone are the days where, you know, you have your structured budgets by department. A lot of technology spend actually comes from outside of that IT traditional budget. And so how do you prepare that change in an organization? Because, you know, we have governance structures, we have those pieces, and it's important to have those structures, but it's also important to allow the business and different departments to really put their skin in the game and say, hey, I want to invest X dollars in Power Automate, just using that as an example from an earlier conversation. But that spend is coming out from other departments now. So that empowerment has to come with dollars. It has to come with process. The other part is a feeder pipeline. So you don't need a complicated, you know, 10-step process. I don't think that's ever really great to have. You just need a pipeline of, hey, this would empower us today if you did this, or if you gave us this technology, or if you changed this. The other part, and this is a really, really tough one, is doing a digital reorganization. You really, really have to get to reskilling every person in your organization, whether that is your frontline teller to your CEO. And it's important because you have to have a common language when it comes to digital transformation. So as I said in the beginning, yeah, everyone sells digital transformation as AI, email targeting. You know, I saw the other day, there was a platform around just market segmentation, all of those things. But in a digital or reorganization, you've got to reskill every person and have a common language. And the concept of org structures becomes really different in this aspect, right? So org structures become fluid, they're constantly changing, and they're based on digital capabilities. A conversation I often have with my CEO is, if we were to open the company today, how would we structure our organization? And that's an important question, because it kind of draws your future state to your current state. The other part is building that resilient workforce. So we've all gone through where someone wasn't included in a project or someone didn't see a message. But organizations that are digitally transforming have to have the resilience to say, hey, that happened, but I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to get involved now. I'm not going to wait for the traditional ADCAR or that whole process. Not saying you shouldn't use an ADCAR process, probably should, but it's not a 6-month process anymore, especially in a digital transformation. It's a short process as often it is. And the more resilient your workforce is, the sooner they're going to pick up those things. But these are some key things you've got to get right. The other part is, as I said, it's not just an IT thing. You've got to think about what are the exponential technologies we have out there today, right? So we've got the cloud, we've got cheap computing, artificial intelligence, the digital technologies of the first 3 generations are just everywhere, right? I mean, it's just amazing what we can do today. Whatever couldn't be automated can be handled, can be now today, whether it's shared services or business units, wherever that may be. There's so much automation out there that you've got to really pick your exponential technologies. Then there's the processes, right? So I often talk to my team about garbage in, garbage out. Your processes, no matter what technology you put them in, they've got to be amazing. They've got to be amazing for the customer, though, and the member. They can't just be processes that are good for internal staff, or they've really got to have the end in mind. And that really speaks to kind of just think about it with net. I know Netflix is a common example that we use today, but really think about just how they evolve the process of DVD rentals to really an algorithm-based recommendation and download on Netflix. They looked at a process. They looked at a process and they looked at a customer need versus simply putting a technology in and hoping for the best. The other part is your ecosystem, and that ecosystem is people, your technical assets. You can now hire almost any skilled resource, and there's platforms out there like Upwork, there's platforms, even contracting resources to really build that resource pool and that ecosystem of people. And when I talk about ecosystem of people, I'm really truly talking about the culture of your organization, because that's so critical for a digital transformation. And you really got to be true and set on that ecosystem. And so when I talk about ecosystem, it's everything around you. It's the pace that you move at. And under all of this is the speed. The speed at which you move will be so critical for a digital transformation. We want to go from not taking 2 years to launch something. Let's get something in the hands of our people so they can comment, they can be it. The other really important piece is digital transformation has to be driven by value. And that is why one of our tenets at IFCU is value. And it's because we want to always deliver value, whether it's to our members, whether it's to our staff, whether it's to our partnerships that we're trying to look for. We truly, truly want to look at these things. And when I go back, and I'm just going to try to emphasize, and I can't emphasize this, and some of the, I spend a lot of time reading and shuffling through different books, but you've also got to emphasize it's about business, and it's not just about technology, and it's transforming an existing organization. So existing organizations are a lot more challenging than I would say creating a startup, because you truly are looking at changing what people do every day when they come into work to what they do after they're done work. And it's continuous. It's not a project. I always often tell my own teams is my pet peeve is when someone names something a digital transformation project, because you can't have it as a project. It's ongoing. It is not something that you can do off the side of somebody's desk. It's not something that you can say, hey, we're going to build a 2-page strategy and hope that it's going to work. It's something that you have to have committed ownership at disruption empowerment. And when I talk about those digital reorganizations, they are so important. It's important to give somebody the empowerment with a budget, but also reorganize their organization to fit a digital native organization. Because what you want is you want people to always think, okay, how would we do this digitally? How would we adopt this technology? How quickly can we get this in the hands of our people? Versus the traditional approaches that may be, let's say, hey, let's do an assessment, let's go through 25 steps and so forth. But I really think it's important that you always go back to the stage model, right? So are we constantly looking at things? Is it siloed? How do you get from foundation to siloed? Well, you've got to have committed ownership. You can't do it off the side of somebody's desk. You can't have 2 people rowing in one direction and 3 in another. You truly, truly need everybody on board. And that's where it's important to emphasize, even to your front line. I may be an SVP, but our front line is the most important stakeholder I have. And that's because they are truly the ones that I need to buy in, to tell me when their technology isn't delivering value to members, to customers, to themselves every day. It's so important. And I think even when you go from a coordinated program, it's really important that you're transparent and that it's going to be bumpy. It's not going to be perfect. And we're going to have bumps along the road. A good example, we've launched some software in the last little while. Hasn't been perfect. We've had a couple releases that go out. And that's because we chose that path purposefully. So our staff are used to it now. I think getting to that fully synchronized, it takes a village. It's not a one-person job. It's not a one department. But I can say some lessons learned is you definitely need that escalation process. You need a process to say, hey, we're not aligned here in the strategy. We're not aligned to this grouping. We really, really want to go down the road of making sure everyone's aligned, making sure that no one deviates from that strategy, and that there's accountability for everybody. So, it's not just Shahani who's owning digital transformation, it's an organizational wide approach. And when I go back to these, get these things right, there's so many things that you could have to get right. But if you focus on these things, you're truly going to get a win. And, I have to say, digital transformation is not an easy thing. It's not easy. It's not a one and done. It is truly it's a journey, and it's going to have its ups and downs, and it's definitely going to have more. But some things I can say is always have a framework, set up the guidelines, best practices, a clear vision, an assessment of the current state, a roadmap, a governance structure. So that's probably one area that I've learned over time in my career, is having a clear governance structure that defines the roles, the responsibilities, the decision-making authority of all the different stakeholders. And that goes right from a board to your front line. And I think it's really, really important to always measure the progress. So something we do in our organization is we measure the progress and the implementations of what's happened over time, right from doing postmortems to saying, hey, let's just do one quickly here for this one. They always say there's so many positive changes that come with digital transformation. There's improved efficiency, productivity, innovation, the creativity. Recently we rolled out a module, and I was so happy to see my staff and my teams in the organization and how much easier it made their lives. And that was just through sentiment and conversation. That wasn't an actual measurement. But the reality is of that situation is that you've got to measure everything. You measure if these softwares are making an impact. You measure those results, because that's how people start buying in. I mean, I don't think credit unions are the first to do a digital transformation. If I go all the way back, Toyota has done some amazing work to streamline production processes. I use the example of Netflix, Starbucks. Their coffee chain implemented a mobile app that you can order, pay, collect your rewards. The app uses artificial intelligence. I can think of recently Coursera I was on. The online education platform offers so many options and uses digital technology. But again, without getting some of these things right and following a governance structure, a roadmap, you truly are going to end up in a place where you'll be in almost a vicious circle. And I can say from my own experience, that vicious circle, it can truly be exhausting if you're in that circle. And if you really get the buy-in and you do the empowerment and you go back to that one transformative purpose every time, often the conversations are, well, will this simplify banking? Will it actually simplify banking for Canadians? And those things are just so important. I can't emphasize it enough of how important it is for that ownership, that empowerment, the reorganization, and then even just the processes and the technology and the ecosystems. They all come together. They're not, you can't do one and not do the other. They're almost like a pie that you've got to do. And again, like I said, it's not a project. It's about the business. It's about making sure you're changing your business model from what it is today to what it is not. Again, there's definitely going to be challenges. You've got to help people through it. You've got to help people by preparing them, supporting them, really, truly planning for facing resistance, misunderstanding, or even fears that people may have. I don't know if everyone recalls or has heard about the robot that came into a bank recently, and everyone thought that this was about 5 years ago. Everyone thought the robot was going to take over their job. I actually think they had to pack up that robot because the robot didn't actually listen correctly. And so, again, it's really addressing people's fear of if it's going to take over their job. We're in the world where generative AI is now coming out, and it's an absolutely amazing gift that we're getting. But there's also fear that comes with that. And that involves using your heart and saying, hey, this is going to be hard. You might be scared, but we're going to do this together. You also have to really think about, integrating all of the technology and the processes. It can be hard, and it's going to be difficult, and it's going to be bumpy. But I think we've come a long way as an organization by being honest and saying, this is bumpy. This is going to be tough. And it's worked in several organizations I've worked in, is just being transparent and honest. The other part is really, once you've adopted all of these technologies and you've gotten these things right, is you can't just forget about it. You want to make sure people are changing the way that they actually work and interact. You want to really, truly look at, have people really embrace these new tools and processes, or have they found ways to kind of maybe circumvent that existing one because they're comfortable with the old process. It's not malicious, but it definitely is something that you have to continuously measure. And so we use different frameworks in our organization of total economic impact. But we also look at things like just everyday adoption. Are people putting things that they should into our technology? Are they following the process? Are they informing stakeholders of new processes? And that really comes a long way in driving adoption. And really, in all reality, I always say, digital transformation is it's a hard job, but it's definitely one of the most rewarding, because when you see the end result, it's amazing. You can see the engagement go up in staff. You can see the business revenue go. You can see a business model change. You can see satisfaction changing as well. And you really are truly going back to that purpose. And I think that's a really important piece. The other part, and I go back to this cartoon often in my life, because there's always going to be people who say, yeah, let's make sure we're agile. But you have to have a structure around that. Agile doesn't mean that you are not planning, doesn't mean that you're not learning. It's a different structure, and it's a different way to get your ways of working done. And again, that goes to your culture, and that goes to every single thing that you do as an organization of how do you change your culture for digital transformation? How do you reorg an organization? Can you truly reorg an organization for digital transformation? what happens when you do that? Are you going to have more changes? Are you going to have less changes? How does that change who you hire, where you hire from? I mean, I work in an organization where our head offices are in Saskatchewan. I am not in Saskatchewan. And that was a huge driver for me. But at the end of the day, that was a culture change for our organization and a process change. We've done amazing. I've seen other organizations where who haven't done well with it and who choose a different option. But at the end of the day, I always go back and remember digitalization. Lots of places and companies offer software technology to change from paper-based to digital forms. But when you look at digitalization, you've got to get to that phase first and then get to digital transformation. You can't really jump from one to another. And it's a journey. It's, again, creating new processes. You don't always have to modify your existing. You might just say, you know what, we're going to throw out this existing and start fresh and think, what would we do today if we were a digital native organization? So when I say digital native, I mean that's your DNA. That is that living DNA. Digital operations is your DNA. You know, market leading, you're fully digital, your workforce is digital savvy, and that truly is something that you have to be mindful of as an organization, because digital savvy comes from different levels and means different things. But it's really, truly important to have everybody become digital savvy. And with things like generative AI coming out today, there's going to be so much more at our fingertips and our hands. And, you know, we use Microsoft, but I'm sure there's other products and services out there. For us, we are fully embedded in that strategy. When I talk about that digital operation too, I always talk about how committed is your board? How committed and how aware is your board of having digital operations become your DNA? Because it's different from upgrading your technology, going through your budget cycle, and saying, hey, we'd like to buy a software, to making digital operations your DNA. So changing even at the board level is important. And so when I say going from one level, you know, changing everyone, and it's not just IT, it truly is every single layer in the organization. Will everyone change? Probably not. That's probably a real wishful thinking approach. Some will change, some will not. But at the core of your culture in your organization, you'll be a digital operation if you are truly living DNA. And you'll be ready for whatever else is coming your way. You know, COVID probably accelerated digital transformation needs tenfold. The other thing is, it's actually proven that about 70% of digital transformations actually fail. And these are large companies. You know, P&G went through one and they failed about 3 times before they finally got to double-digit growth. Netflix actually had some bumps in their road as well before they got there to where they are. I mean, I think everyone knows about Blockbuster and their approach, but there's actually facts out there, 70% fail. And that's a hard statistic to argue, because if they're failing, why are they failing? Well, it's because they don't have a structured approach. And when I say a structured approach, you don't have to have a 45-page document, but you definitely have to have some governance and some controls in place. And whether that is from a board level, you're saying you're going to have an ad hoc committee, or you're going to put it into your digital technology committees or your IT committee, that's up to every organization. But the reality is you have to have governance at all levels. And it's an important piece, because without it, and it's a lesson I've learned a couple of times, is that without that governance, you're going to end up having some conversations that are really hard. And having governance allows you to say, okay, you know what, this is our governance practice. The other part is, people think digital transformation is doing agile projects. Yeah, for sure. Want to do an agile methodology versus a waterfall. But again, that doesn't mean you're not planning, and it doesn't mean you're not looking at your processes. It doesn't mean you are not picking core tenets for you. For us, again, like I said, we pick some key ones, and we followed a framework from David Rogers. who I will recommend as a book, and he has several books out around digital transformation. However, your tenants may be different. Your tenants can be different. But one thing that does have to happen is you have to have some alignment, and you need to have all of your leaders agree that these are our tenants and we're going to follow them. And one of the most important things too for us is as well, we truly, truly want to get these things right. I can't emphasize this enough, and I'm going to keep saying it, is committed ownership, that empowerment to disrupt, a true transformative purpose, that skin in the game for every leader, your digital reorganization, the technology, the process, and the ecosystems. Those three things have to go together. You can't have them go separately, or one can't be really mature and one not mature. You need those three things to be successful in digital transformation. And so gone are the days where, IT rolls out a software, you hope it's really good. You have to have really great process, and your process has to keep your customer in mind. And if you don't keep your customer in mind, there's going to be others out there. I think the government of Canada, for example, is now starting to include fintechs in the payments world and part of the Payments Canada Charter. That's a game changer because that is a blocker that they had. But if you have the customer in mind at the end, you could probably partner with one of those fintechs and still have an amazing exponential process. And so, again, can't emphasize enough. DX is about business. It's not a technology piece. Technology plays a part. I won't say that it doesn't. It plays probably a good chunk of it. It transforms an existing organization, and it's continuous. So I guess I'll be employed for a little bit longer because it's continuous and not a project. Different organizations will have different standards, different challenges. So it's not a one size fits all. But if you have the ownership, you have the empowerment, you're going to be a lot further. I'm going to say thank you very much again for allowing me to speak and kind of share what I'm truly passionate about. Some key resources, like I said, these are probably two books I swear by and actually have here on my desk a lot. Digital Transformation Roadmap by David Rogers, and then Why Digital Transformations Fail. So important to know why things fail and why people weren't successful previously, because we can all learn from that. But I'm going to hand it over to you, Greg.
Shahani, thank you. Really great presentation. I think everybody who joined us probably is thinking about either going to start this process or is in the middle of this process. So probably a lot for them to really embrace and absorb today. Hold tight. I want to get to you with some questions from the audience. If anybody has questions who is on the webinar and wants to ask them of Shahani, please type them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and I will ask them of her as time permits here. But as I mentioned earlier, this virtual event is sponsored today by Creatio, which delivers the freedom to own your automation and change fast, thanks to the power of their no-code platform. Shahani mentioned no-code or low-code a lot in her presentation. Jason Miller is here with us. He's Creatio's chief no-code evangelist. Jason, I know you and I were texting throughout this, or chatting throughout this webinar and throughout Shahani's presentation. She mentioned a couple times that this is a journey. It's not something that you just do and it's over. And it's also not something that's about technology. It's about business. But one of the things we hear a lot from our credit union members and our credit union association members and their member credit unions around the world is that removing barriers is such a big step to getting this started. How does one do that? How do you empower everyone in your organization to do that?
Well, there's a couple ways to think about that. One, it's all about engagement and making sure that people are engaged throughout the process. And Shahani, you mentioned that a couple of times today, and getting people bought in. But it's also making sure that you have technology that allows that. One of the challenges that we see a lot of times is that people look at technology as a barrier, and it inhibits them from doing things, and there's no value add from that technology. And this is across the organization. It's at executive levels, mid-grade levels, even the boots on the ground level. And as Shahani mentioned, it's really those boots on the ground that feel the pain because they're the ones that work with it every day. So something like Creatio, we really focus on empowering everyone. So developers, citizen developers, the end users, giving tools that are usable, intuitive, easy interfaces to handle a wide variety of business processes and different business needs within the credit unions.
I know that you talked a lot about, we were chatting a lot about unified platforms, keeping everyone informed. Could you give an example of how that's done?
Yeah, one of the big challenges that a lot of financial service organizations face, and it's not just in the credit union world, but I think it impacts the credit union world even more so than banks, is you have a lot of silos of information, core banking systems, loan origination systems, and a lot of organizations, especially smaller organizations, you find them sitting in maybe data lakes or in spreadsheets, and it's just not manageable. As a matter of fact, I was on a call with a small organization this morning that they still do a lot of their outbound outreach to potential customers via spreadsheets and trying to email them directly. The challenge with that is nobody has visibility, and you're being informed or you're not being informed and trying to make decisions on that lack of data. Having a unified platform that can really pull all of that information in is an extremely valuable asset that many organizations struggle to have. I'll give you one example. Imagine that you're dealing with both a retail and a commercial side of an organization. Oftentimes, you have the same individual doing business with both sides of the organization. And then you have people making decisions on one side of the organization without having the information coming from the other side of the organization, whether it's because of these split systems or just lack of relationships that are built with those members. It often can impact the way we make decisions. So having that piece that wraps around or engages with a lot of these other back-end systems is very important to really help drive a unified vision of your member.
Jason, hold tight. I do want to get to some questions for Shahani, and of course, if you have input as well. But Shahani, we have our first question all the way from Ukraine, from Ivan, who asks, what advice would you give to a small credit union up to 12 employees that only provides services in the office and has no experience with online services? What advice would you give to start that digital transformation process?
So I should have mentioned this in my presentation, and it's that you don't have to be a giant organization. You have to have the heart of that giant organization. So one of the major milestones for us as an organization is we are a $3 billion organization that became a federal credit union. We're the third one in Canada. And we did that because we punched above our weight. We jumped in, we looked, we researched, we hired people who were driven, passionate. And so putting your foot in the water is probably your first step, is say, hey, let's try something, let's do it. And those 12 people will probably be amazingly strong, and take advantage that it's 12 people. Take advantage that you don't have that many layers, or you're not the 1,500 organization. Take advantage of that. You're actually probably in an amazing position because you'll likely get the speed that some organizations won't get, because there's about 5 or 6 layers in between getting a decision and things. That's probably my advice, is jump in. There's enough out there in the world that you can research and pick partners, providers. Those 12 people can be absolutely an army of about 100 if you really truly want it to be.
We hear that a lot too, that when you don't have that bureaucracy of legacy systems to break through, sometimes that process can be faster. Do you find that as well, Jason?
Absolutely, and this gets back to the point when and Shahani made it, is having people aligned very easily with not only the business but also with the technology. It's very important, and it ties into the next question that I saw in the chat from Naomi, which was, is there consequences to ignoring this idea of digital transformation? And the answer is absolutely. So this people think of it as a dichotomy between I move or I don't move. And Shahani called it out very well earlier, which is you can even start it off in small chunks. And that's why even for Yvonne, being in a small organization, you can take these things on and start to increment and build on top of each other. And next thing you know, you've got massive impact, and the needles moving based upon your willingness to take on even these first pieces. So, Shahani called it out right. You can start small, but you need to continue to build on that. It's not just a one and done. It's a, how do I move the needle here? Okay, great. Now how do I move it here? And then how do I move it here? And both your people and your technology need to be aligned to that. And that's kind of where I think that a lot of organizations fail. And I think Shahani mentioned it right earlier. They say, all right, I'm done. And then the next disruption comes through with another competitor, and now you're behind again.
Yeah, Shahani, any thoughts on that, the consequences to ignoring digital transformation? That question, by the way, from Naomi in Liberia in Africa.
I definitely think there is consequences, and the consequences are as simple as low engagement, right? Everybody wants simpleness when they come to work, whether it's a process that you're doing on paper, whether you're doing it on a computer. Everyone wants that simpleness. Everyone wants work-life balance. Engagement is one of those. The financial piece of it, I mean, I can speak to so many organizations that have jumped in and have lost because they said, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because that's good enough for me. And so the consequences are truly that. And I mean, I think there's consequences even from well, if not you, then who, right? So we purposely in our organization have chosen the co-opetition model because we want to partner with those fintechs. We're saying, no, we're not going to let them come and take our lunch. We're going to partner with them and we're going to co-create a solution that works for both parties. And so I think the consequences are engagement, there's financial impacts, and you may not see it in year 1 and 2. You might see it later down the road. And it's almost like when I mentioned you're one step away from being disrupted. So it could be, you know, you've got something really great, but then someone comes in, swoops that away from you, because that's the world we live in today.
The question came in from Erica for you, Shahani, asking, in addition to the 2 books you recommended, are there any other resources, certifications, thought leaders on the topics of DX that you would recommend?
I mean, I probably have a long list. For those in my organization know how much I love to read and look at things. But for me, one really eye-opening course was through Emeritus. They offered a digital transformation certification, which had kind of, it was about each module is about 8 weeks, I think. And so that one was definitely very eye-opening, and it's a self-study program, so really great. I think even Microsoft offers now just basic certifications in digital transformation, and you know, just to understand the world that you live in. There are many out there, but a big fan of David Rogers because he's really put frameworks into play, playbooks into play. Again, Why They Fail is another really good one. But yeah, there's so many out there.
I think it was probably clear for some, maybe not everybody. I want to ask just a specific question about no-code platforms, no-code automation. Jason, I know that's the Creatio specialty, but what does that mean exactly?
So I want you to think of it this way. There are about 25 million developers in the world at any given time. Okay, those are the IT guys, the folks that are coding in the back end for all of these systems. And it doesn't matter what the platform is. And there's a million different languages out there, right? Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4 languages. The challenge of that is that the demand on business continues to grow every day. You don't have enough IT folks. You don't have enough IT budget. You don't have enough IT resources. This causes stagnation with the ability to get a lot of things done. What no-code technologies do in general, and there's a lot of them out there, no-code technologies help empower citizen development. These are the people that are closest to business process. Give them the capability of managing and building applications without having a line of code, working hand in hand with their IT counterparts to develop enterprise-grade applications to solve these business problems and business needs. And what you've done is it's a force multiplier. You're able to engage the 1.7 billion knowledge workers that are out there. There's a great study from Forrester that talks about from Gartner that talks about almost 65% of all applications will be done with some sort of low-code, no-code technology in the next 5 years. So that is the major difference. Is it's allowing people that don't necessarily have that coding experience to build applications, manage applications on a daily basis.
Shahani, do you find that option, it works for some, it might not make as much sense for others? How do you see that? Or how are you seeing that play out?
So I think I definitely agree with what you said, Jason. You know, you don't have enough people to be in, and those skills of coding, I mean, they're taught now in grade 7, 6, like kids are learning this right off right out of school, but I think it works because it allows for people to just solve their own problem, right? And it creates that I can fix it myself by doing this. You definitely, again, have to have a governance structure around it so that you don't have 45 apps doing the exact same thing. But that's an easy thing to build out, right? There's enough resources out there to build that. I think it works from a small to a large. But again, it's a culture change because the traditional approach is you put a ticket in, you ask for the code to be developed, you elicit requirements, and that's a culture change. That's a hard one for a lot of organizations to go through because it's like, wait, you're expecting me to write this software?
It's
Um,
interesting. It's interesting, Shahani. It is a culture change, but a lot of times people look at it as, well, I love this power, and it's now because they feel empowered, they feel more engaged. So you talked a lot about engagement earlier. So I will tell you, we have seen organizations from small all the way up to top 25 in the world really embrace this idea of digital transformation using a lot of different tools, including low code and no code. And to your point, the governance, it's not that hard. You just have to think about it and make a conscious effort behind it, because it is a very important topic. Because now you've taken this world of developers who the professional folks have been doing it their whole lives. They understand what it means to develop good applications, develop good code, develop good things like data governance and data cleanliness. So you have to automate those things, and that's what a lot of the no code tools in Creatio really do. We've even got a separate governance module just for that. So it's a very important topic. Thanks for bringing that up.
I want to mention that Cassandra Schrader, who really is integral in putting all these webinars together, just dropped into the chat a link for Creatio if you're interested in finding out more about them. I want to see if maybe we do have one more question here. Yvonne again asks, now more and more automated financial solutions are being created, bots that rebalance accounts, optimize expenses. What do you envision credit unions to be like in 10 years when AI is really taking hold? And what will be the advantage for credit unions? That's kind of a loaded question. And I know we don't know exactly all that AI is going to do and can do yet, but Shahani, thoughts on that?
for me, honestly, I see credit unions will stick to their cooperative principles, right? They'll stick to that heart, being in the community, those human interactions. But all of that stuff that we do and I don't know how many will remember, but you used to have the book where you'd balance your daily teller,
A
I
ledger,
think
yeah.
there's ledger blotter thing that they used. I think all of those tasks will be gone. And I think they will be through a system, and you'll have more people who are truly looking at living those cooperative principles, whether it's educating our communities on what credit unions are about, whether it is partnering or training and knowledge for our members. I honestly think it's not a go back, because I think we all still live our cooperative values, but it'll stick to that human interaction piece. And yeah, do I think AI is going to change some things? For sure, but you can't take away the human interaction that people desire and need and want. Like, that's a psychological need that people want. And I think credit unions will stick to that, and they will continue to be very good at it. Where I think AI will help credit unions is they'll have an advantage because they don't need the $1 billion budget anymore. They will need a simple low code, no code option and AI to help them.
I agree, and I will tell you, I think that AI in general is the hottest topic in the industry of financial services right now, and all the tech companies are all looking at how to use this in new and creative ways. I'll give you a couple of examples. Customer service engagements. Every time you touch a customer, being able to use all of the information that you have available from all of your different systems, and then use generative AI to give you recommended next steps, or compose an email, or compose a text message for you that then allows you to review it and send it. To Shahani's point, AI is a little bit like a teenager. You need to give it boundaries, you need to give it controls, you need to understand what information you're giving it, and then help it learn from that information so that it will give you good outputs. That's what training AI models are all about. And all the tech companies are really heavily invested in it. We are, Salesforce is, Microsoft is, all of these different companies are out there working towards how to deploy this in use cases that directly benefit financial service organizations. And I will tell you, it is literally the hottest topic on the market right now.
Final questions. We've only got about 5 minutes left, but Sharon asks, and I don't understand this question, but I'd assume you might. How do you prevent the use of rogue apps similar to how rogue spreadsheets are used now?
Oh, I could have an entire webinar on Excel spreadsheets, but I won't do that. It's really the governance, right? It's governance, it's centralization of that governance model. So in our organization, we have a Microsoft Center of Excellence. They are the governors, I would say, of it. And they truly are the ones that hold us accountable, who also train and educate. I think that's a really important piece, because I don't think anybody shows up to work ever and says, hey, I'm going to build this rogue app and this is my life goal today. I think it happens by mistake. And so having that training and education through your workforce is so important. And that, coupled with the governance that we've put in place, and it's a simple structure. It's not a difficult, like I said, 45-page process or procedure. It's a simple governance structure so that we are all aligned, and there's an education component.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it, and I just actually answered this in chat as well. The biggest difference between this idea of shadow IT and and having a center of excellence that operates holistically, and we see this a lot in the no-code world, is you give them tools, you give them governance, and you give them education, as you mentioned, Shahani, to help them do the things that they're trying to do in this kind of shadow IT world in a structured manner with tools that can be governed and managed by a center of excellence, right? And regardless of your technology choice, ensuring that people have the right education, information, and structure is probably the most important thing, and really how to break down that shadow IT, but still give those end users the capabilities and the kind of outcomes that they're just yearning for.
Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour here. I thank both of you so much for your time, Shahani and Jason. And if anybody has questions, please drop them in the chat here before we take off. Once again, I do want to thank Jason and the sponsor of today's virtual event, Creatio. You can learn a lot more about their no-code automation platform at creatio.com. Again, that link is in the chat as well. And if you liked this event and want to watch it again, or you'd like others to see it, you can refer them to the World Council YouTube channel. That is at youtube.com/Woku, youtube.com/Woku. This webinar will be available there later today. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great day.